I want to welcome you to this slot in which we discuss, examine, consider issues that relate to education, to training, to teaching, to learning, to research. I'm sure you must be aware that the broad goals of Kalam Radio include education, promotion, and entertainment. So this slot meets one of those broad goals. For those of you who have been following us in our discussions, you will recall that we have attempted to look at the issue of education being, or schooling being, a scam. We have looked at both sides of the coin, and as I mentioned at our last discussion, that at Kalam Radio we believe that schooling is intentional and deliberate investment that any individual can make in his or her destiny. The dividends pay year long, lifelong. So this morning we want to look at something a little bit related, because it still touches on education. So what we are looking at is educational standards. Eventually it will take us to the argument that is in town that people make. Some, you do not see the thesis upon which they hang their conclusions, that the standards of education in Nigeria have fallen. So we'll be looking at standards of education. You can begin to reflect on it. Do you think that standards of education have changed, stepped up or stepped down? So we want to lay a foundation for whatever agreements or disagreement we will have on this matter. So what is standard? Standard is a measure that falls within an acceptable range. A measure on a continuum. I have used the word acceptable. We are going to look at how that fits in acceptable. Some of us describe standard as a rule or set of rules or requirements which are widely agreed upon or imposed by regulatory bodies. We'll be talking of those regulatory bodies shortly. So here, a standard is a rule or a set of rules or a set of requirements determined, imposed, recommended, prescribed, but agreed upon to be applied across the board. For instance, if you look at how senior school certificate outcomes are described, there are standards long agreed upon which these descriptions are based. For instance, the least grade available at this level of education, that school certificate exam, which is written at the end of the 6th year in secondary school, SS3. The least grade any candidate can get is a 9, and it's F. They call it F9. It's a fail grade, and it reads from 0 to 39. So any mark that falls within that bracket is described as a fail grade. So, and the letter grade is 9. Next to it, you have D8. D8 is 40 to 44. D7 is 45 to 49. And you go on to C6, which is 50. Well, that's the lowest credit pass a candidate can have. So when you ask a candidate, how many papers did you make, and the person says 5, we do not recognize D and F as making. The making begins at credit 6, C6, which is 50 to 54. C5 is 55 to 59. C4 is 60 to 64. B3 is 65 to 60. B3 is 65 to 70. B2 70 to 74. And A1 is 75 and above. Now, we're saying that standard is a set of requirements which are widely agreed upon, and they are imposed by regulatory bodies, or body as the case may be. We'll go down and see how this works out. In the university, polytechnic, and colleges of education systems, the regulatory bodies are National Universities Commission, National Board for Technical Education, and then you have a National Commission for Colleges of Education. They regulate everything that happens. The standards are determined at that level, even though other stakeholders might be brought in, but the face of the regulatory bodies are NUC, NBTE, and NCCE. For those of you who surf the net, at the end of every academic session, when schools do graduation, you will see certain candidates that are celebrated by their schools, and they say somebody scores 4 point something. They say 4.98 out of a possible 5-point grading system. Person scores 4.9 something. They say this is exceptional. Sometimes you find a candidate who has 5.00 GPA. The standards are determined at the institutional level, but of course there are stakeholders who are external to these institutions who also have input. So what have we said so far? That is, a standard is a measure falling within an acceptable range. Look at JAMB, for instance. The total marks obtainable at any JAMB exam is 400. Then at the end of the examining period, a national stakeholders meeting is called, where JAMB authorities, of course it is facilitated by the Ministry of Education, Federal Ministry of Education, JAMB, heads of institutions, provosts, rectors, vice chancellors, and stakeholders are called in, and then agreements are made. What's going to be the cutoff mark out of a possible 400? Well, maybe when we go on, we'll see whether 100 over 400 should be acceptable under any circumstance. You hear somebody say, "Oh, in those days you couldn't score for 100 over 400 and hope to go anywhere." But now JAMB tells you that's the minimum. Institutions have a latitude for discretion, so you can exercise discretion. You find some of these first generation universities insist that on no condition can you score 100 and come near them for anything. But there are others who go to town shopping for candidates. So a standard is a measure falling within a range. We can now ask ourselves whether 100 marks over 400 should fall within any range of acceptable standard. Now, looking at standards in education, don't forget we are building towards the point where we'll be asking ourselves if standards of education have improved, have deteriorated, or we have managed to maintain our standard. So the concept of standards in education includes both description of what is taught, description of how it is taught, description of what the outcome, the performance outcome, what it should be like. So when we're looking at standards in education, our focus is what do we teach? That's the curriculum. How is it taught? We'll be looking at the methodology, and what is the outcome? We'll be looking at performance. So standards factor in these descriptions of the curriculum, because if there's if an educational system will produce candidates to the standards set by the nation, then you begin to pay attention to standards right from the point of the curriculum. Don't forget, curriculum is the document packaging what is to be taught. Sometimes it includes how it is to be taught, and well, of course, who should teach it. I'm sure those of you are following up on the tension in Nnamdi Azikiwe University, Awka, over the appointment of a vice chancellor. The Academic Staff Union of Universities National has assumed a position that this individual who has just been appointed, they say he is not a professor, that is only a holder of a doctoral degree, and that the books, the standard is that to become eligible to be a vice chancellor, you must be a professor of a number of years standing, and the union is brandishing the statutes, the guidelines, the laws that prescribe and that describe the procedure and the outcome of a selection process. So we're talking of standard. Now those people are saying that standard has not been respected. So we're saying that when we're talking of standard in education, we are looking at the curriculum, we are looking at the methodology, we are looking at the personnel. Sometime in the past, I don't know, I hope whether government is still implementing this, I can't say now, but there was a time that government came out and said that the lowest qualified teacher in the school system, primary school, will be somebody who holds a Nigerian certificate of NCE in education, NCE. But you and I know that today that is not quite the reality. According to them, we must build standard. And if you are prescribing that the least qualified teacher or operator in the school system should hold an NCE qualification, we're talking of standard. So what have I said so far about standard in education? That a description of standard in education should prescribe on the nature of the curriculum, what standard should it have, 2 on the methodology, and 3 on the personnel. If government, if agencies, if supervisory bodies begin to pay attention as early as at the point of putting together a curriculum, then you can say that there's a foundation being laid for achievement of standard. Now, assessments constitute a critical part in the process of establishing standards. So we're looking at assessment, and what does assessment do is simply to measure the extent to which what is being done as it ought to be done. So that's what assessment helps you to do. You'll not be asking, does the curriculum reflect desired standards? Does the facilitator, that's the teacher now, possess the requisite, if I say requisite now, standard qualification and exposure? Then we'll be looking at the methodology. Are we training, are we teaching according to agreed upon standards, methodology? Now when the students get out, when the products of a system go out, assessment is normally done. Something funny in the last 2 weeks, or was it last week, where somebody was saying that they were recruiting somewhere, and there was a PhD holder who could not answer questions. Of course, that created a lot of backlash, and some people have harped on that to say, is this not what we are saying? How can a PhD holder not be able to answer questions? I see, education in Nigeria, the standard has run down. We are flat. Well, I won't be in a hurry to take sides on this matter. You know, the Englishman will say that a cuckoo does not make summer. One cuckoo does not make summer. A cuckoo is a bird. It's maybe I now say, I know where dry season has come, and somebody say how. So I saw one cattle egret yesterday. Or the appearance of one cattle egret doesn't indicate that dry season has come. So if there's one PhD holder somewhere who is unable to answer questions, then we are going to be challenging many variables in the system. Somebody was right. I think Nigerian Tribune, one of the oldest media houses in Nigeria, was celebrating its 75th anniversary either last week or so. And one former employee of Tribune, who is now a big person somewhere, was writing to say, look, that there are more PhD holders in Nigerian Tribune in some faculties, in some institutions in Nigeria. Of course, I wouldn't disagree with that, because I know there was a survey that was undertaken by even the Federal Ministry of Education some time ago, and you'll be humbled by the outcomes. You find a whole university brands itself a university, but that's one professor. Some too, but it's a university. And we say, if this is how this journey will be made, we have a very long way to go. And now professors are baked. They are baked. You get it by recommendation, but it's a function of your standing in the politics of the university in which you serve. So that will determine how soon you are going to become a professor, if you will. If you are on the wrong political side, you are likely to be where you are for a long time before you become. So we are saying here that there's a process of assessment which is usually undertaken to establish that standards are present, standards are observed. Remember, standards are agreed upon rating. So assessments are done, and anyone who is familiar with how assessment is done will agree with me that 3 core variables are emphasized in any assessment, any evaluation, and they are the variables of validity. Is this assessment valid? Does it measure what it is supposed to measure? Is it reliable? Can we rely on the outcome of this assessment? If we do it again, will it generate the same result wherever we go to apply it? Is it consistent? So you find a researcher who is talking about validity, reliability, consistency of assessment tools. So any assessment that is carried out should establish whether standards are maintained or standards have taken a tumble. Now, I mentioned at the beginning that standards are set and maintained and supervised by regulatory bodies. We're going to take a short break and we'll be back to continue on who are these bodies. So stay tuned. Welcome back, dear listeners. Now, standards are set by stakeholders, by those who know to be. They are the ones. And in that group, you find the people that they call SMEs. They are SMEs, not in terms of business now. They call them subject matter experts. When you are putting together a curriculum, you are developing content for a training program, it is those who know the theory, who know the principles, who know the practical demands of these skills you want to teach. They are the ones you call to sit together. Please, this is the program we have in mind. We are thinking of people who will be able to do X, Y, Z. So we call experts in the X, Y, Z fields. They are the ones who sit down, who put together things. So they call them subject matter experts. They are SMEs. Then examining bodies are brought in, and other stakeholders, particularly employers of labor. That's why if you go to universities and other institutions of higher learning, for a course such as accounting, you're going to find subject matter experts and other stakeholders from our accounting bodies such as ICANN, such as ANAN, such as this, I think, National Something Taxation Institute, and others. They're the ones they call. And if you go to schools, the accreditation an institution has to run a program has key inputs made by representatives of employers of products of such programs. So when your school is undergoing accreditation for accounting, for instance, you can be sure that representatives of ICANN and ANAN are present. They want to see. Let's see the textbooks you use. Where's the curriculum? They check. Okay, can we get notebooks for us from your students in the class? They want to see, are you doing what you're supposed to do? Are you preparing these students for gainful employment? Now, the problem that's the reason why some people complain is that, you see, somebody has qualifications in accountancy, in engineering, and you employ the person on the face value of the certificate. If you recall, at our other discussion of whether schooling is a scam, people argue that certificate is only a piece of paper, and sometimes it does not correlate with what the carrier of the paper knows. So if a PhD cannot answer question, the problem is not with the PhD certificate, it's with the owner. Because the PhD says the council, the senate, if it's in polytechnic, it will say the council, the academic board have found you worthy in character and learning. Well, maybe the guy holding the PhD was found worthy in character, but not in learning. But once a certificate goes out, people say it's only a piece of paper. It doesn't actually show until you begin to do. I remember I mentioned certificate here last week. That what people go for now is that, in fact, employers of labor now say they put higher value on certificate than certificate, because certificate is only paper. Certificate is the doing part of it. What you sabi, certificate. So standards are developed. They are recommended. They are prescribed by experts, subject matter experts, by practitioners of the particular skills that children are being groomed to be able to do. You will find Nigerian Society of Engineers, COREN, Council of Engineers in Nigeria. You have Nigerian Medical Association, or council as the case may be. In law, you will find National Bar Association, Nigerian Legal Council. Those are key stakeholders in the training of lawyers in Nigeria. Not only training, in the practice of law in Nigeria. And so no university gets accreditation if these bodies don't make input. And don't forget, what is the goal? So that standards can be created and maintained. Yeah. What does standard do? Standard only ensures, for instance, standard in education is to guarantee that wherever a child is in Nigeria. Okay, let's look at school set now. WASC, not NECO, WASC. The standards that have been set and maintained over the years are intended to guarantee that whether a child goes to school in Gambia or Ghana or Sierra Leone or Liberia or Nigeria, these qualifications, these standards are transferable. So if I have B3 in Nigeria in mathematics and I go over to Gambia, who are signatories to the charter, to the WAEC charter, they see B3, they are not going to be asking how do you get it, because they are signatories to the charter. So my B3 is accepted and recognized in Gambia. That's the point. The point is that whether a child attends St. Gregory College in Lagos, one prime secondary school in Nigeria, or he goes to Comprehensive College in Auchi, where you are not, if you mention comprehensive, I'm not sure anybody outside here will know what is comprehensive. But the idea is that whether a child goes to school at Ikoyi or goes to school at Akpekpe in Auchi, in Isako, in Edo State, there's guarantee that the same thing is taught. The same quality of teaching is done. And at the end of 6 years, these children from this country sit for the same exam. When English is being written when the English shows on the timetable in Nigeria, it's the same in Ghana, it's in Gambia, it's in Sierra Leone, it's in Liberia, it's everywhere. That's the idea. So that there is equity in the dispensing of educational services wherever those standards are used. Now we ask ourselves, what impact does standard make in education? Don't forget, where are we going? We are going to the point where we'll be arguing, have standards of education in Nigeria falling? That's where we are going, or not? So some of the key functions of standard are: one, to provide clear and measurable expectations for student achievement. Clear, measurable. I've told you now, F9 is 0 to 39. It's measurable. You can mark, you can check it. For those, okay, let me just mention, when our children sit for these exams, NECO, WAEC, whatever, within 3 to 4 weeks after the papers are written or the exams are concluded, marking centers come alive. You see teachers of physics in a given environment are invited, so long as they are certified by WAEC. You know, there's a process of certification where you are cleared and found fit to be a WAEC examiner. They go to designated centers, and within 2 weeks, physics scripts are marked nationwide. Did I say nationwide? Everywhere that WAEC is respected, within 2 weeks, physics is dealt with, chemistry is dealt with, economics, everything. In 2 weeks, the results are packaged. That's why you find that now, when we went to school, it took months of anxiety, agonizing anxiety, before our results came out. And each time you stumbled on your question paper, you will faint afresh, because your mind will tell you what you wrote and what you did not write. And those days, they used to have grade 1. I was telling you of grading, of assessment. In our time, it was not, I had 6 credits, 6 A1. In our time, it was A. You had to have where you could fall within some ranges. And the first range, grade 1, aggregate 6. See, I had aggregate 6. 6 subjects were usually computed for candidates. Your best scores, your best grades in 6 subjects were computed. So somebody will say, a parent will say, my son made aggregate 6. What did that mean? A1 in 6 papers, including English and Maths, of course. A1, and then they will add up 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, aggregate 6. Then grade 1 ended in aggregate 24. From aggregate 25 to 30 something, you had grade 2. Then you had grade 3. And then you had the one they used to call S75. S75 those days meant This one attempted school set, maybe he had 1 or 2 credits and some passes. He could not say grade 1 or grade 2 or grade 3. But now that has changed. That classification is gone. It's only our generation now that remembers it. So, standards help to provide clear and measurable expectations for student achievements. Clear and measurable. Clear and measurable. You now know that if I have to score to get a C5, my mind should be targeted to 55. 55 to 59. That's my C5. I begin to target it. So clear, measurable. Clear, measurable expectations for student achievement. One other function is that educational standards drive instruction. They drive instruction. If you go to any higher institution now, that's why you find that especially books written by American authors, the topic to be discussed will be indicated, then the objectives will be listed at the end of this chapter. You will know, you will understand, you'll be able to calculate, you'll be able to factorize, you'll be able to calibrate, you'll be able to identify. They do that. Clear, to drive instruction. So as a teacher in the classroom, whether you call me lecturer or whatever, whether I lecture or well, you hear people when you say this man is a teacher, I say I'm not a teacher, I'm a lecturer. Whether you eat big snail or you eat the small one, you eat snail, that's the important thing. So whether you are a teacher or a lecturer is beside the point. So as a teacher, I go to class, I look at the objectives that have been identified in the curriculum. At the end of this discussion, students should be able to compare and contrast, should be able to label, should be able to identify, should be able to do this. So standards help to drive instruction. Okay, maybe I should not use drive. Standards help to guide instruction. I remember those days when I was dean in Auchi Polytechnic, Edo State. I was dean of SPATs. Saturday, it was exam time, but I went to a wedding because as a dean, if you arrange properly, you are not supposed to be on ground all the time. You have to, if you have people who understand their functions. So I was away to a wedding at Fuga. Fuga is in Esako Central, Edo State, Nigeria. I got a call. Hey, sir, your students are demonstrating. I say, what is happening? They say one class, one department, they walked out of the exam hall. I jumped into my car and drove down. Thank God, they listened to me. I went around, I said, okay, it's not good that we should be talking to class. Just go back to your exam halls. They went back and I went from hall to hall. Talk to them. What was the grouse? A lecturer said questions that he did not cover. He said questions from areas he did not cover in class. If standards are set and operators of the document of content understand what to do, the lecturer breached trust, breached agreement, because you are supposed to do this, what you are supposed to, you did not do it. So we're able to pacify the students and ask them, don't worry, just answer the one you understand, leave the other ones. We will base your assessment on the ones you know. And we identified, isolated the questions that were put by mischief. It was mischief from the lecturer's side. We dealt with that. So standards help to guide teaching, guide research, guide mentoring, so you know what you are doing. Don't forget, the standard will describe what is to be done and will describe what those who go through, who learn it, should be able to do. I remember what a lady, one of our products, she, along with others, applied for a position with Chevron Chevron, oil producing something. They went through the initial screenings, and then it got to a point. There were now about 3 or so. This one, a lady, and two men. They were invited to come over to the facilities, and they went. And before they came in, the examiners had done some disconnection, switched off some components of a machine system. So, okay, yes, you applied for this. Congratulations, you scaled through stages 1, 2, 3. This is the final stage. This stage determines it. Now, this equipment is not working. Do diagnosis and fix. You were surprised. It was the girl that got it. She looked at, because I don't know. You know, when you go to, I was telling a class today. I came from the class to come to this place. I said, look, in any normal class, you will find one, maybe two students whose intellectual frequency is higher than others. It's higher than the frequency of others. And I say, by their nature, such people, they don't have patience to wait for you to explain things to everybody. As soon as you are putting it, some of them can see where you are going. And because they have to wait for others to catch up, they get easily distracted. So I was telling the class, I said, look, some of you, the witch that is disturbing you is not your stepmother. If you fail in this class, if you fail in your exam, it will not be your stepmother. It will not be your maternal grandmother. Sad as it is that we easily ascribe evil to these people. I said, the problem pursuing you is that your neighbor who is sitting by your side. He has understood the concept. So because he already knows what the thing requires, he is distracting you with side talk, and you are listening, you are giggling at your failure that is coming. I said, look, let me tell you, at the end of the day, it's what you know that you are graduating, not with piece of paper. It was this girl. She came there because the equipment, we have them in the polytechnic system, but when you go to any workshop, you will find 1 or 2 people at the back discussing Arsenal, oh, thank God for Arsenal and Man U and Chelsea. But in a workshop, engineering workshop, what has Juventus to do with what is going on in a workshop? And the lecturer is there, is telling you this is how to do diagnosis. When you do diagnosis, the running of an equipment, this is what you do. When you touch this, it doesn't work, you switch off this, check all these connections. It was this girl who got it and got the job. Incidentally, she's a daughter to one of our long retired colleagues. A girl, engineering, put on the thing, didn't work, check this one, didn't work, went to that place. Eventually she saw what was disconnected, saw the places that things were switched off, put them together and press the button. They just, okay, lady, step aside. That's what we are saying. Standard will describe what is to be taught. Standard will describe what is to be learnt. So it guides learning. Then it helps in the measurement of achievement. How do we measure? I've told you already. First class. What NUC tries to do is to harmonize the grading system. If you are using a 4-point grading system, where A will always have 5 or 4, if it's 4 point, A4, where in some schools you have A, they have A plus, A minus, some have B, B plus, C plus, but A, B, C, D, 1 point, C 2 points, B 3 points, A 4 points. So if it's a 4-point grading, and the guy comes from Bayero University, Kano, BUK, and they say first class, Unilag, first class, they should, that first class should be a parity. Don't say where the graduation, say BUK, all this BUK, all those places. My own is from UI. What are you saying? There's harmonization which has been done, so that first class from anywhere is first class. Of course, we know there are certain internal factors, dynamics that play out. I read about something online about a certain higher university somewhere in one of the states. Somebody has just been recommended for appointment as deputy vice chancellor, and protests have come from within and outside the university that this same man that you people are recommending, is it not that man who gave a student pass grade in a carryover that the student did not do? There, if you go online, you will see Sahara Reporter. Sahara Reporter knows what you are doing inside with your hand in the drawer of your locker. Sahara Reporters knows what you are doing inside there. So, but that's what is in town now. That how can you? This man has moral blemishes. How can somebody who has a professor gave a pass grade to a student in a course that the student did not register for, and the student was interviewed because the case was tried, say yes, I did not do the course, but when the problem now started, I went back to go and register for it, and I've passed it. So people are saying, if somebody can be this generous to the point, to an immoral point, generous to an unethical point, to give mark for a course somebody did not do, how can you trust the administration of standards to that person? It's a big question. How can you trust administration, measurement of standard? You entrust to someone who failed the ethical test. Well, we'll leave it hanging there. So standards help us in determining, in defining, in describing, and in measuring standards and apportioning descriptions. So when we now say F9, that's it. That's why in the university system, not in a higher institution system, if you get a grade in a course where you expect to have done better, there is a procedure that you can undertake to get redress. That the mark they gave that I got in that course does not reflect my ability. They say, okay, right, you're right, and formal procedures will be undertaken. And surprisingly, every once in a while, it turns out that the student is right. I was underscored, and they check and they see, oh, sorry, this thing happened. Oh, because of I did not buy textbook in his course. That's why he did this. They are able to establish it. It is because there are standards. Because there are standards. So what have we done today? That standards are a measurement on a range, on a continuum, on a frequency determined by operators of a system, not just operators, by key stakeholders who decide that when we say 230 over 400 in JAM, we can say, oh, that's good. That one is qualified to go to law. 160, no, this one cannot go to anywhere except this. That's what we are talking about. When they say, if you look at when accreditation teams come for a program, they will look at the staff outlay. In the polytechnic sectors, they will say, how many chief lecturers are in that program? How many principal lecturers? How many senior? What is the ratio of senior to junior lecturers? If you go to universities, they will say, how many professors are there? You can't be awarding a master's degree when there are no professors in the department. How many professors? What is the ratio of professors to other people, other teaching staff? These are all the things they factor together. How can you get PhD from a department where the highest rated staff is a PhD holder himself? How do you do that? These are issues of standards. So I want to thank you for listening. We'll be back at some point to now ask ourselves, have standards of education in Nigeria changed for the better or for the worse? Thank you. Until I come your way again, I am Eshose Sonny, and my producer has been Mariam Ikaro. Thank you very much.